We have a bill before us that if each of us had written it, wouldn't look the way it looks. Clearly, if my friend had written it, this wouldn't be in there. If I had written it, this wouldn't be in there, and a lot of other things would. And I think, and I'm so happy my chairman has arrived, Chairman Inhofe, I'm his ranking member on Environment and Public Works, because what we did in our title, and our title is responsible for 70% of the spending in this legislation, we knew that each of us had a wish list, and we knew that if one got everything he wanted, we wouldn't have a bill. And if I get everything I wanted, we wouldn't have a bill. We had to meet in the middle. We had to withhold on some of our wish lists. And frankly, I think that's the story of legislating a huge and important bill like this, and it is an important bill. Before I came over here, I said to my friend, Senator Inhofe, I read that the whip over in the House, who comes from California, said the Senate should not send the bill over to the House. And my response to that is, if we have a bill, we're sending it. If we have a bill, we're sending it. And he says we're leaving, and that's it. Now, if the House chooses to go out on vacation or a work period or whatever they do, that's their business. But it's our job to fix the problems we're facing. So with the help of my friend, Chairman Inhofe, I have a couple of pictures to show you. The first one is my photograph. It's the bridge collapse on the Interstate 10 at the Arizona-California border. And, Mr. President, this bridge, years ago, they said it was structurally obsolete. Is that right, Andrew?
Functionally.
Functionally obsolete. Functionally obsolete. In other words, when it was built, nobody thought so much traffic would be going on it. And later they gave it an A, but it was determined to be obsolete. Now, the reason bridges like this aren't getting fixed is we just haven't had enough funds to do it. And in this bill, it is true, we stayed away from gas tax increase. We found a way to get enough for what I consider to be a very solid funding bill. And let me show you some other bridges that have collapsed. And there are so many. Here's Washington State. The Skagit River Bridge collapse. Look at this. Unbelievable. Cars down below crashed. This is pathetic. This isn't a third world nation. This is America. Washington State bridge collapse. How do you think we're going to get the money for it? We need to pass a long-term bill. Mr. President, if we pass a 5-month bill, like some of our opponents are calling for here and in the House, we don't have dime one to fix any bridge. All we're doing is, at the bare minimum, extending the program. No one is going to undertake any type of fix, long-term fix on these bridges. This is the Arlington Memorial Bridge. It was built in 1932. We know about it. It's right here. It collapsed. This is a problem. It's deteriorated. It's in trouble. We're trying to avoid a collapse. We need this bill to do that. So when I talk about this bill, these bridges are in trouble. Here's another one actually did collapse. Is this the one from Minnesota? This is Minnesota. This started the whole thing, and it was in '07. It was unbelievable what happened there. And you can see the devastation. This is why Senator Inhofe is doing this. It's the reason that I am doing this. It's the reason that Senator McConnell is doing it. It's the reason that Dick Durbin is doing it. It's a reason that so many of our colleagues on both sides of the aisle are willing to admit that while this isn't a perfect bill, we cannot sustain this. Either bridges are crumbling or they're collapsing. Now, there's other examples, and why don't we keep up the California bridge collapse? It's the one I know the best because it's in my state. And as I have said, and I ask rhetorically, how much business are we losing when we have cars and cargo having to go 400 miles out of the way, 400 miles out of the way to get from California to Arizona or Arizona to California. This is a nightmare. And we found some emergency funds, as I understand it. We're going to try to figure this out, close part of it down, keep part of it open, but it's not that safe to do. And there's no reason why. And I'm going to read to you, it may surprise you to hear how many bridges are deficient and in need of repair. In Kentucky, the Brent Spence Bridge. In Louisiana, I don't say these names right, Calcasieu River Bridge. In Maine, Piscataqua River Bridge. In Maryland, Chesapeake Bay Bridge. In Massachusetts, the I-95 bridge. In Middlesex. In Michigan, the I-75 Rouge River Bridge. In Minnesota, the I-35 East Bridge over Pennsylvania Avenue. In Mississippi, the Vicksburg Bridge. In Nevada, the Virginia Street Bridge. In New Hampshire, the I-293. And I'm just reading some of these, and when I'm done, I'll put the whole list in. In New Jersey, the Garden State Parkway in Union County. In New Mexico, the Main Street Bridge. In New York, the Brooklyn Bridge. These are iconic structures. They need to be fixed. They're deficient. In North Carolina, the Greensboro Bridge. In Ohio, the John Roebling Suspension Bridge. In Oklahoma, the I-40 bridge over Crooked Oak Creek. In Oregon, the Columbia River Crossing. In Pennsylvania, the Benjamin Franklin Bridge. You think we ought to fix the Benjamin Franklin Bridge? Rhode Island, the I-95 viaduct in Providence. In South Carolina, the I-85 bridge in Greenville. In Texas, the I-45 bridge. In Utah, the I-15 bridge. In Washington, the Evergreen Point floating bridge. In Wisconsin, the US 41 bridge. Alabama, Arizona, Arkansas, California, the Golden Gate Bridge. That is the hallmark of my state, one of the landmarks, and it is deficient, in need of repair. Colorado, Connecticut, District of Columbia, I showed you the Memorial Bridge, Florida, Georgia, Hawaii, the Halona Street Bridge in Honolulu County, Illinois, the Poplar Street Bridge, Indiana, the I-65 bridge over the CSX Railroad, in Iowa, the Centennial Bridge. I ask unanimous consent to place this list of deficient bridges in need of repair into the record, Mr. President.
Without objection.
Thank you. Mr. President, if ever there's a bipartisan issue, it's this one. It was a Republican president, Dwight Eisenhower, when he was running, he was shocked at the condition of our roads and the fact that we didn't have roads, really, that were in good shape connecting one state to the next. This is the United States of America. We are a large and sprawling nation. He said, a network of modern roads is as necessary to defense as it is to our national economy and personal safety. This is Dwight Eisenhower. A network of modern roads is as necessary to defense as it is to our national economy and our personal safety. He was referring to the fact that we really couldn't move easily between the states if there was some type of national emergency. And I want to say, I was a little girl when Eisenhower ran, and my father was a lifelong Democrat, but he was for Ike. And one of the reasons he was for Ike is he knew that we needed this kind of network. It appealed to him. He knew how important it was. Now, Mr. President, if we look at the groups that are supporting us in this effort, I would just say they represent America. They're everyone, from the U.S. Conference of Mayors to the Brotherhood of Carpenters, from the Chamber of Commerce to the International Union of Operating Engineers, from the AAA, and most of us belong to AAA, because we're worried that something's going to happen in one of these bridges and one of these roadways that's filled with obstacles, and we could get in a crash. We belong to the AAA. They support us. The Laborers International, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, the American Council of Engineering Companies. Let's put up some more. Again, these are unusual allies. Usually we're fighting each other. The National Association of Counties agrees with the National Association of Manufacturers, who agree with the truck stop operators, and the Governors Association, and the National League of Cities, who agrees with the Ready Mix Concrete Association, the National Stone, Sand, and Gravel Association, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers, the Portland Cement Association, the retail industry leaders. Why do they come together for this? If you're in the retail business, if people can't get to your store, you're not in there for very long. If they say, you know, it's just not worth it, I'm going to buy online. The fact of the matter is we need to fix our roads. The American Highway Users Alliance agrees with the American Society of Civil Engineers, the Associated General Contractors, and Mr. President, I want to make a point. On Tuesday, the Associated General Contractors, the AGC, put out a very important and alarming study. Here's what it is. Construction employment declined in 25 states between May and June. And as they went on to explain this to the press, they noted the monthly construction employment declines come as Congress continues to search for ways to pay for new highway and transit investments. The monthly construction employment figures are troubling. Investing in transportation infrastructure will make it easier for many firms involved in highway and transit construction to add new jobs. Now, there are certain states that are worse than others. Illinois lost 2.2% of their construction jobs. They shed so many, followed by New Jersey. New Jersey, second most shedding of jobs, 4,600. Ohio shed 3,700 jobs. Florida, 3,100 jobs. Rhode Island, 700 jobs. Now, you know, I've heard my colleagues say, well, Vermont, 500 jobs down. So here's the thing. I've heard my colleagues say, well, we don't like the way this is paid for. We have better ideas, and I agree with them. I have better ideas, too. I've got 10 or 11 or 12. But I'm not the only one putting this together. We have to find that magic sweet spot where we can get 60 votes here. So I'm just thinking, if they vote no on this, but it passes, when they go to meet one of these workers and the worker says, thank you so much, we got this job because we got a 3-year funding bill. What are they going to say? I didn't vote for it because I didn't think the funding was right. I wanted it to be done a different way. I'm sure the worker would say, you know what, I appreciate that, but I'm working. I'm working. I'm feeding my family. So I understand why people want a better source of funding. And we have tried. And as my chairman knows, we've tried so hard. And I know he wants to speak now, so I'll close down my time with this. Yes, I will.
Yeah, I'm not attempting to get the floor. I think what you have said is very significant, and I think people realize, and I've said several times that you and I are about as far apart philosophically as any two people can be.
That's right.
You are a very proud liberal. I'm a very proud conservative. And we disagree on a lot of things in the committee that you used to chair when Democrats were a majority and that I chair now. But all during that time and up to the present time, we agree on this. And when I see people saying that they don't want to, I am very disturbed about what the House is doing right now. If you don't have a long-term bill, we're going to go right back to what we have done since 2009. You and I can remember when we passed the 2005 Transportation Authorization Bill. That was huge. We have things that have happened in Oklahoma now as a result of that are saving lives. Remember, I used to talk about the bridge that a chunk of concrete fell off and killed a mother of 3. That happened right before the 2005 bill. Now that's progress. That's where we've been. And I can't imagine that we're going to be in a position where we go back to increase the number of short-term. We've had 33 short-term extensions since 2009. And I can't imagine that we'll go back. When we do that, we don't get the reforms. A lot of the reforms, I say to my friend from California, were reforms that she had a hard sell. She had a hard time doing it. And there are a lot of things. You know, I wanted to change the 80-20. First of all, we had some areas that were 60-40, then 70-30, but we couldn't do it. And I remember that there was quite a bit said on the floor and in our committee by one of our own committee members on that. So that was one of my losses. That wasn't necessarily one of your gains. But the bottom line is we now have a bill. You know, we have a bill that is going to be before the people will have a chance to vote on it. And this is the last chance we've got to get off of this thing of part-time extensions. Now, I would ask, you know, if my good friend from California is observing the same thing that I am on that.
Well, I'm observing it exactly the same way. And I said before that we have a very honest relationship in terms of where we can find that common ground. And it is in this arena. As you have pointed out, you read this Constitution and I read this Constitution. And you have said many times, and you've addressed people who have heard you say this, that this is a constitutional responsibility to make sure we have roads, bridges, highways, and we can move interstate commerce. And from my perspective, not only do I agree with that, but I also think it's a very important way, while we're taking care of the people, to see that people have good, decent jobs and that businesses prosper. So I think we've never had a problem working together on this, and I would hope that our being able to work together would bring liberals, conservatives, moderates, and everybody in between to tonight's vote. I don't know what the vote's going to be, I say to my dear friend, but I do know this: the House is, you know, saying through their whip, they're leaving. Well, you know, that's up to them. And we all know from the Association of General Contractors, it's stated right here, and I ask unanimous consent to place this statement in the record.
Without objection.
That in 25 states we're seeing layoffs right now in the construction arena because we have not acted. That is tragic. And what happens when people are laid off? We know what happens. We're getting out of this tough recession. And none of us wants to walk down the path of the short-term solution. So I say to my friend, I'm going to finish my remarks in about 2 minutes. I'm going to yield the floor to him. I look forward to hearing his remarks. But we have work to do tonight. We've got to get 60
Fine,
votes.
just one statement, then later. Then I am going to be coming back to talk about some of these amendments that are coming up. But in terms, one thing that we need to clarify with our people on our side, that the conservative position is to support this. Our good friend, our mutual friend, Gary Ridley, said that the extensions cost about 30% off the top. 30%. So clearly, in fact, I will say this: after our 27-month bill, we went over to the House, and I had requested an audience with all 33 Republicans on the appropriate committee. All 33 agreed that it was a conservative position. All 33 voted for the bill. I think we have the opportunity to make that happen again.
Well, reclaiming my time, my friend is right. This is an area where conservatives, progressive, liberals, moderates, what you call yourself doesn't matter. We need to have a good, strong highway system. We need to fix the bridges. We need transportation. And that's what we do here. In closing, I want to make this point. Mr. President, each of our states relies on the Highway Trust Fund since Eisenhower was president. And I have a list here, and I think I put it in the record yesterday, so I don't have to put it in the record again. but it shows how much each state relies on the Highway Trust Fund. And I'm going to just pull out a few states because it's interesting. Because I know my own state is 49%. We raise the rest of the money. But that 49% is huge. And if it were to disappear, we simply could not do what we need to do. So my state's about 50%. But here are some of the states. Rhode Island, 100% of its program is funded by the Highway Trust Fund, the Federal Highway Trust Fund. Alaska, 93% is funded by the Federal Highway Trust Fund. Vermont, 86% is funded by the Federal Highway Trust Fund. South Carolina, 79%. Hawaii, 79%. North Dakota, 78%. South Dakota, 71%. Connecticut, 71%. Mexico, 70%. Now, just from that list, that's everybody who's 70% and over. Those are red states, those are blue states, those are purple states. My point is exactly what Senator Inhofe said yesterday. The fact is, there's no such thing as a Democratic road or a Republican road, or an independent road, or a progressive road, or a liberal road, or a conservative road. We all use the roads. And unfortunately, increasingly, at our peril. At our peril. Idaho, 68%. Alabama, 68%. New Hampshire, 68%. Missouri, 65%. Minnesota, 64%. Oklahoma, 63%. Georgia, 62%. Iowa, 59%. Ohio, 58%. Virginia, 57%. Wisconsin, 55%. Oregon, 54%. And it goes on. And every single one of our states is waiting. The lowest, as I understand it, looks like to be New Jersey at 35%. But the fact is, whether it's 35%, 45%, or 90%, or 100%, they all rely on the Federal Highway Trust Fund. All of our people pay into it through the gas tax, and we have a responsibility. We are moving forward if we get the votes tonight. And again, we don't know that we'll get them. We are working hard to get them. We will move forward with a good transportation bill. And for the first time in 10 years, we'll have a long-term bill. Now, the Washington Post did an interesting editorial. They don't adore this bill. They found problems with it, as we all do, but they said it's a sensible plan by Senator Boxer and Inhofe, and we worked it out, that it provides 3 years of guaranteed funding, that it would be a significant improvement from what we've done in the Congress for the past decade, and that lawmakers fumbled from short-term funding patch to short-term funding patch, a non-strategy that often relied on budget gimmicks and made it possible for transportation officials to conduct long-term planning. The New York Times said on Tuesday what I said before: construction employment, Madam President, fell in 25 states this summer as state agencies awaited word from Congress on the future of the highway and transit spending. We also know there are well over 500,000 unemployed construction workers, 500,000. And now they're starting to get laid off again. No, I want to see the chart. Thanks. And I don't know what else to say to members. The biggest reasons they're voting no that I heard is they would like to find a better funding source. Well, all of us would, and if we had our way, Madam President, you'd come up with your funding source. I love mine, which is a refundable gas tax increase. But I can't get a lot of votes for that. People won't give me the votes for that. So what do? Throw up my hands and just say, oh, we'll have another short-term extension? No. I sat down with Senator Inhofe. I sat down with Senator Durbin. I talked to Senator Reid and Schumer, of course, and all my leadership over here did my best. And I think everyone has to understand it's either this way or we just will have to do a short-term patch. And I will predict, right now, 7 states have shut down their program completely. If we don't find this solution, we're going to be looking at each other in a month, 2 months, and we're going to see programs shut down. And I often use this analogy, so if you've heard it before, I apologize in advance. But if you go to the bank, you want to buy a house, they say, great news, you qualify, and they only give you a 5-month mortgage. Are you going to buy the house? Of course you're not. Are our states going to build a highway if all they have is 5 months funding? No. That's why private sector that gets this money from the states, that's why they're laying people off. Now, I want to say, working with Senator Inhofe, we were able to create a new national freight program and a new program called Assistance for Major Projects. This means that every one of our states will be eligible, and it's exciting to have those kind of programs. The freight program will provide funds for all states. It's all states. They're all going to get part of this formula to improve their goods movement, to reduce the costs, and improving performance for business. It expands flexibility for rural and urban areas to designate key freight corridors. This is exciting. The program is supported by the Coalition for America's Gateways and Trade Corridors, business groups such as the National Association for Manufacturers. Now, under the Assistance for Major Programs, this was something Senator Whitehouse of Rhode Island worked very hard on. The bill provides support for major projects of high importance to a community, the region, the nation, through a competitive grant program. It includes a set-aside for rural areas and ensures equitable geographic distribution of funds, along with strong transparency provisions. Now, these things are exciting news. Whether you're from Iowa or California, we're all going to get these funds, and locally, we'll decide how to spend them. Our bill, Madam President, passed the committee 20-0. What a great moment that was. And the reason is we knew we had to compromise. So the part of this bill from EPW is a compromise. The part of the bill from the Commerce Committee was a little bit trickier because it did come out on a partisan vote, but we've been working, Senator Nelson and Senator Thune, Senator Blumenthal, others, working on that to make it a better title. And I think it's moving in that direction. The banking bill, Senator Brown's staff worked very hard on this with Senator Shelby's staff, and I believe it's clearly been improved since it was first released. And the Finance Committee was tough. Senator Wyden tried hard on putting some ideas out there. It was tough to get them done, but somehow we have managed to put together the funding. It does clear the CBO. We are in surplus for 3 years in the Highway Trust Fund. We haven't done that. Is it 10 years? 10 years since we've had more than a 2-year extension. This is real. And I just say to my friends from the House, I know you want to get out of town. Everybody does. It's August and we have plans. A lot of us are going to go around the world and do our job that way, have community meetings, take a week of vacation with our family, like every family wants to do. But you know what? We're staying an extra week in August. You can stay an extra week in August. That's not such a terrible thing. And you know, I get an announcement from the whip over there. Representative McCarthy is from my state. He says, don't send us a bill because we're going home. Well, that's their choice. You know, Madam President, that's their choice. There's so many groups for this. I'm going to put this list up again and share it with the President because I think it's so important. It is really tough to put together a bill that the U.S. Chamber of Commerce supports, along with the International Union of Operating Engineers and the Labor's International Union, and the U.S. Conference of Mayors, and the AAA. Not to mention Mothers Against Drunk Driving, and I'll show you some others that, you know, it really is exciting to see the National Association of Counties. I started off as a county supervisor. I was in local government. You know, and to have us agree with the National Association of Manufacturers and the truck stop operators and the National Governors Association and the League of Cities and the concrete people and the gravel people. If you look at this list, and there's one more here we'll put up, what you see here is everybody supports this, Madam President. The American Public Transportation Association, the American Trucking Association, the Associated General Contractors, and the Association of General Contractors has warned us if we don't get this done. It's a real problem. So, for the sake of every single person in America, Madam President, I hope we have the 60 votes we need tonight. And I hope we get this moving. There are a lot of people who've been slowing this bill down. I understand they're upset about everything. Look, we each could be upset. I mean, every day we could be upset. But we have to try and find common ground. And, you know, sometimes it's very hard to find it. And certainly, you know, Senator Wicker was here. He and Senator Feinstein have an amendment. I really support it. It's unfortunate that Senator Wicker's opinion didn't hold sway in the Commerce Committee. It's hard. It's difficult. I personally think he's right. He didn't win in the committee. So now we're trying to fix the problem. We may not have the votes. But what we do have before us, and I'll conclude with this, is a solid bill with increases so that we can fix these bridges. And I want you to see the last image of my talk here is this collapse of this bridge in California. It just happened I think it was 2 weeks ago or less. And what we had here is a bridge that was called, tell me what it was called exactly. This bridge, this one. Structurally.
Oh, functionally obsolete. Functionally obsolete.
I'm sorry, it took me a minute. Functionally obsolete. Because what they said was, when it was built, there was very, very little commerce on it. But now it's a very important bridge because we have to take the goods from Arizona to California, California to Arizona, and it has collapsed. And Senator Inhofe and I, we talk a lot about why we do what we do. He had a devastating bridge collapse, And a mother of 3 was killed just walking by a bridge. And that's when he and I said, enough is enough. We simply cannot handle it. So it's our job. You know, once I was told when I was a county supervisor that if you know there's a problem and people are in danger, this is what they told us way back in the day. Because we had an earthquake problem with the building we were in. And the county council came and said to the 5 supervisors, you know this is a problem. If you don't fix it, there is an argument to be made that you are personally liable. Now, I am not suggesting that U.S. senators be held personally liable for a bridge collapse at all. But I'm talking about the moral issue here. We do know we've got problems. We were fortunate no one was killed here. It was kind of a miracle. But we do know there's a problem. So while I know we don't have a legal obligation to step up to the plate, I believe, and I know Senator Inhofe agrees with me, we believe there's a moral obligation. All of this list of bridges, did we put them in the record, Andrew? Did we put them in the record? Okay. There are all these 3 pages of bridges that we know are in trouble. We know 50% of our roads are deficient. So isn't that enough for us to come together tonight? It'll be probably late in the evening, I expect, and vote to move forward with this bill. Get it done, send it to the House, and hopefully they will decide to stay in session, take it up, pass it, and there will be a celebration across this nation. And it will be a celebration by workers who want to fix these problems, by businesses who want to fix these problems, by people who drive who want to see these problems fixed. Frankly, it is a win-win for our nation. I thank you so much, Madam President, and I yield the floor, and I note the absence of a quorum.